This is After the Final Rose with Dante and Alana, a siblings podcast talking everything Bachelor and Bachelorette.
Welcome back to After the Final Rose with Alana and Dante, a siblings podcast. We didn't get an episode out last week. It was Women Tell All. There really wasn't too much to talk about.
It was the worst Women Tell All.
It was just a lot of people going after Kate, a lot of people going after Victoria, and then just sitting down with some of the girls. But this week we did have fantasy suites, which we are going to dive into. And there's only 3 women left, which I feel like the season went by so quick. And it
So
just
fast.
went
I
from
literally was
30 to 3.
Yeah, I was watching and I was like, wait, I can't believe we're already at 3. Like, I know we've gotten to know them, but like I still feel like I need more time with these girls. Like I don't know, it just doesn't feel like it should be 3 already.
And I also I'm not getting used to it, but it's definitely different them not traveling and being in the same environment the whole entire time, which we're seeing with Tayshia and Matt. And like as they're getting into these fantasy suite dates, they're in the same house, which or resort hotel, which makes it sort of more uncomfortable. And we'll talk about that a little bit down the road, but it clearly shows.
Yeah, I was like wondering if, I'm guessing they had the whole mansion to themselves, just the 3 of them, which is like not mansion, but the Nem and Colin or whatever, to themselves, which obviously you don't see normally because they're in like a exotic island in a private resort or something. But yeah, so obviously like in the beginning you kind of just see them hanging out and talking about it and like really addressing how their family, because obviously 2 episodes ago we got the oh my god, the hometown. Sorry, it wasn't like a real hometown, so I couldn't even think of the word. But before he has his date with Michelle, we get this one-on-one sit down with Matt and his dad. And I have to be honest, I don't really feel like we needed that. I don't I know it was something Matt needed, and I totally get it, but I'm confused because the whole season he's talked about how his dad is not in his life. His dad was never there. His mom raised him. He constantly talks about how amazing his mom is for being an independent single mom. And I kind of was just like, I know we'll get the girls meeting his mom next week, but I'm like, I would rather just have you sit down with your mom and talk to her about like the struggles you're having, and that if she's the one that's been like your soul, your person your whole life. And I just like, I don't know, it was just uncomfortable. I felt like I was having to sit and be present for a conversation between a friend and their parent that like I wasn't clearly meant to be around for, is what it felt like. I don't know. It's just like I'm not surprised by Bachelor having this. Like that doesn't surprise me at all. It just was like it made me uncomfortable, and I didn't really think we needed to see it as like an audience.
Yeah, it definitely felt forced, and I mean, I think it's a good conversation for Matt to have with his dad.
Yeah,
but it's not something to show on. It's not something to show on camera like that. That's something that's not our business.
No,
that's something you keep in your private life, especially since it's the first time
need to be our
they
business.
had the conversation. Yeah, exactly. And like you put the poor father in such a tough spot where he's just being exposed on national television.
Yeah.
And like it's just not the time and the place. Maybe you could have had it showed I
don't even think they needed to show it. I think you could have had an interview, or you could have had Matt sit down with his mom and be like, hey, so like off camera, I talked to dad. This is what came of the conversation. I personally just feel like how much more of a bachelor's life can we invade? And it just like, it's such a conversation that like should be private. And I just felt like throughout the episode, he brings it up to every girl and it's constantly talked about. And I'm just like, I don't know. I just didn't, I don't know. I can't put myself in Matt's shoes because obviously, like, we grew up with parents, with both our parents, and we grew up with, seeing a relationship that's like Michelle's that started when they were young. And so we don't know what that's like. But I'm not saying I don't think he should have had it. I just think it should have been off camera. I don't really think that we needed to be a part of that.
And to your point about Matt bringing it up to every single girl, I think it could be a conversation to have, but from a production standpoint, it became very repetitive.
Yeah.
And where they should have shown it for Michelle, cut it out of maybe
Agreed.
Bree's date, which was the middle one, and then maybe brought it back for Rachel's. But you didn't need to show it for all three because it was the same conversation being had over and over again.
Yeah, I agree. I will say though, that conversation with Matt and his dad, you could definitely tell that like Matt was raised very well, and I think you can tell he's a very forgiving guy. Like most people would not, they would hold a grudge their whole life. And I know Matt has probably been holding a grudge, but for him to be willing to like not completely forgive and forget, but try to move past it is pretty big. So it just makes me a little curious with everything that's going on right now in Bachelor Nation. Like if he does choose Rachel, like will he, is he just a very forgiving guy? Will he, see past this and try to work past it? Or maybe it's just forgiving with his dad. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not too sure. But following the conversation with his dad, we finally get into the fantasy suites, and it starts off with Michelle. She's the first one up. And their date was interesting, to say the least. So it was sort of like a Pennsylvania Dutch spa, which I personally never heard of. And they were like taking a bath in milk. They were
oatmeal,
putting their feet in oatmeal, and then they were melting butter on each other. And it just felt like breakfast, like gone weird.
Yeah, it was weird.
But
I thought it was cute though, like his reasoning behind doing it, that he was like, I got to see that you have like such a stressful career and you do a lot, and like I want you to feel spoiled, which was great. But it was a really weird spa. But I mean, I thought they both made the most of it and like had a really good time. And you could tell that like she didn't care that was going on. Like she just wanted to be in his presence and his company.
Yeah. And you can just tell by the way they talk to each other, like how much more mature she is compared to like the other girls, and how, I guess, mature their relationship is. It might not be ahead of the other three, but you can definitely tell like they're serious with just their relationship.
I have said since the day she walked out of that limo, the best way to describe Michelle is she's genuine. Like she really, like nothing about her is fake. Nothing about her seems like it's for the show or for cameras. Like she, you see everything, like she's willing to share everything. And I don't know, she's just, she's a genuinely like sweet girl who I think if she doesn't, win Matt's heart, that I would hope to see her in the future either as a bachelorette or on Paradise, because I absolutely love her.
Yeah, I'm sure. She's definitely been one of my favorites this season, and she was one of those girls who came on late. She was in that group of the JV squad. So it's funny that this JV squad member made it further than all these varsity members.
Yeah, for sure.
But they did, obviously we talked about before, but he brought up the conversation with Matt's dad to Michelle, and she was understanding, and she, comforted him, and I guess just, I don't know, there's another progression in their relationship, but you can just tell how much she loves him, and I think he feels it back, but he's held back in a way, because I do think that his relationship may be further on with Rachel or Bree.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think he
But
shows you as much as he does with the other two.
Yeah, definitely. But she did, she got the fantasy suite card and she asked Matt, and they both mutually agreed to go to the fantasy suite. And went from there. But following the fantasy suite in the morning, we see Michelle come back to the mansion, and it's just so awkward. And I truly feel.
Can you remember when it started? Because this was before COVID. And I don't know if it was Peter's. I think it was Peter's season. Yes.
Oh, they did do it with Peter.
And it was so weird that they all had to come back to the same room. And I was like, this makes me so uncomfortable, because that was not a thing in the past. Like, you didn't go, because they each had their own room in the resort, and like, you didn't like go and see each other the next day. And since Peter, obviously then we had COVID, 2 seasons in COVID. So like, we had to now have them come back after it. And it is so uncomfortable. Like, it was no wonder Rachel was like losing her shit, because I would feel the same way. It's like, you don't want to see someone doing the walk of shame when like you literally are about to go on a date with that same guy.
I definitely agree. And I think it's 100% avoidable too. Like, you could easily just not film those scenes, not have them sitting there. Because obviously, I'm sure the producers are like, we're going to go downstairs and we're just going to film you guys on the couch. We know she's coming back. And it's just 100% avoidable. And I'm just not a huge fan of that, because you just put these girls in such an uncomfortable position where they are going to be tortured. Nobody's going to enjoy that or be comfortable with it.
No, but unfortunately, that's what causes a little bit of like if that didn't happen, we wouldn't have had the reaction from Rachel probably that we did, which gives a little more like, not drama, but it gives a little more to the episode. So I get why they do it, but yeah, it sucks for those girls because it's just not fair to them. Like, they already, it's like rubbing it in their face. They already know that they're on this show where they have to fight for, his love against other girls, and it just sucks.
Yeah. And so following Michelle's date, Brie is the next fantasy suite date. And her date's more outdoors. It's they start off by going hiking and into the woods, and they were both talking about how they're not Matt's never really been camping, and
but he didn't tell her that. He told us that, and she thinks he is. But I want to know, like, she even made a point about it. Like, I immediately was like, she gets all the outdoorsy dates, and she said it, and she was like, I'm not even an outdoorsy person. So I wonder, like, why they kept having her do those dates, because even though I thought she was, because when she did the off-roading, she was like, oh my God, I used to go off-roading all the time. So I was like, oh, she's an outdoorsy person. But then today, or last night, she was like, no, I'm not at all.
Yeah, and I thought it was really funny because they start pitching the tent, and then they're like laying the tent, and she's like, "Is this like our fantasy suite?" And I think he said yes, and then was like, "I'm kidding." But I thought that was really funny.
Oh yeah, I was cracking up. I was like, "Oh my God, this poor girl does not deserve for this to be her fantasy suite date and like her one-on-one time when everyone else is getting like actual rooms." But obviously, like, Matt showed her it wasn't the case.
Yeah, and then following that, they go, they did make s'mores, which I think Matt burnt his s'more and then started like throwing up or something.
Yeah, that they showed as a blooper at the end, but it was like,
that was at the end.
Yeah, he like put it in tinfoil and tried to cook it that way, and then he like spit it up.
Which I don't think I've ever seen before.
Yeah, me either.
But so following that, they go into the dinner portion, and like we've mentioned before, he talks about his dad. They connect on that, and they move on. We're like, okay.
See, I actually
we just heard this for. What were you gonna say?
I appreciated it for Brie because Brie could relate, and Brie then kind of opened up more and started tearing up and was like talking about her relationship with her dad, and like she's in the same boat as Matt, and how like if she when she gets married, like she thought, getting married to Matt, that she would like allow her dad in and open up to him about it. And so honestly, like I was happy to hear it then, but I just, like we said, didn't need to hear it for all 3 girls.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point that she is the only one of the 3 that really could relate, because I believe all the parents are together with like Rachel and Michelle. So
yeah.
Bree's the only one who she mentioned like didn't grow up much with her father, so
Yeah.
she was able to completely relate and understand and sympathize for Matt.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I mean, they ended up, he gave the card to Bree. She decided that she wanted to go into the fantasy suite. Oh my gosh, I can't talk, with Matt. And I thought it was funny because he was like, should we kick them out? And then they shut the door on the film crew. But I think that Matt and Bree just look good together. I don't know, the next morning they show them like cooking breakfast and waking up together, and I just thought they looked like a really cute couple. Like I could see them getting married. And then when, again, they make Rachel and Michelle sit in the lobby as, what's it called? Bree comes in from her date, and I just thought it was funny because Rachel like keeps asking them like, what'd you do? Or like, what'd you guys do? And I think I remember that being something from Peter's season as well. I think it was Hannah Ann, or I don't remember, maybe Victoria. And they were like, what'd you guys do? And it was like, why do you want to know what they did when it's like the question of like, did they spend the evening together? Like, were they intimate? Yeah. Were they just talking? Like, you don't want to know that answer, honestly. So it's just like ironic that she keeps asking, and like she's the one that's like spiraling.
And like what kept bothering me, kind of like where you were saying, but like how she worded it, like, what did you guys do? Like the first thing you think of is like, how far did you go? The better way to phrase it is what was your date? Like what did it entail? And like I could not imagine if she asked, what did you do? And then like Bree was like, we went all the way. And that like,
I feel like it's never been. Actually, I shouldn't say never because I don't know, but
Peter
it's not usually. No, it's not usually brought up to the other contestants.
Oh no.
So I wonder if they are told they're not allowed to say like what happened to each other until like after the show's over or whatever. But because they never do talk about it. But honestly, like I said, I don't really think anyone.
But also,
really
usually they're not like in the same vicinity as each other.
That's true.
So this is different circumstances, but you could just see it eating Rachel alive.
Oh my God, yeah.
It carries on into her next date.
I felt bad because usually you see these girls like running and jumping up to them, and they're really excited, and she just looked pissed. Like she was just like, I don't want to be here. Like I'm mad.
Yeah, and so their pre-fantasy suite date was, I think it was like a ceramics class sort of, or pottery. So they were creating, I think, like bowls. But mid like date, she was just like, can we go and talk? And
I think she was like, I think she was in the situation where she kept trying to make the pot, and she just was like getting so frustrated by every little thing was setting her off. And I think that she was like, I need to talk to him or I'm gonna explode. And it was so uncomfortable to watch because they weren't really talking to each other. And like in that situation, how do you really talk to each other unless you're like doing the pottery together? So it was kind of weird. Like I'm happy they did get up and like break the ice and go over and talk about like how she was feeling, and then come back versus like staying there and trying to finish out the date like with all that on your mind.
Yeah, and I kind of felt bad for the lady teaching them because she was like right there, and she was like, oh, can we go talk? And then just left the lady, which I thought was funny. But Matt helped her out. He de-stressed her. He like talked her down and kind of ensured her like that his feelings were strong from her, and I think that's what she needed. I think she said it actually. She like wish she could have just asked Matt, like, is it me in the end, or like, this was like a side
Yeah,
interview.
she was saying she wanted to just know if he was gonna hurt her.
Yeah,
which is
I mean,
tough
is
because
fair.
it is, but I don't think that they like really can say that. Like he can't tell her
you
that.
Can't. No, and
so it's
like, well, I was gonna say, what happens if, you know, he's like, we have an extremely strong connection, and right now it's ahead of everybody else, and I could see a future, and then he goes and picks someone else. That's where it would be
and that
a
was
huge
Ben
issue.
Higgins. That was Ben with Lauren and JoJo, and JoJo just was broken because, and you know, it's actually funny because I was having this conversation with someone, and I was like, if you were if you were a contestant and it was down to the final two, and you told the Bachelor or Bachelorette that you loved them, would you want them to say it back to you, even if they're gonna say it to the other person, or would you rather them like just wait until it's finally you? Because like at one point it gives you false hope if he doesn't choose you, but then at the same time it's like you will always remember the first time you saying you loved, like, I love you to someone, they didn't say anything back.
Yeah, well, that's something big with I feel like it's extremely telling this season that of these three girls left, they've all said I love you, but Matt has only said I'm pretty sure he said he's falling in love with Rachel.
I think I'm falling for you. Or no.
Which is
nope. She said I'm falling for you, and he said I feel the same, like I feel the same way as you do. Like I have the same feelings as you. So he said it without saying it.
Yeah, and that's sort of telling because usually
it's a lot.
Like when Bree said it, he leaned in for a kiss and he said, "Thank you for sharing." And then when Michelle said it, he did the same exact thing.
Yeah.
But we saw earlier in the season when Rachel said it, he said, I'm feeling the same way, which I think is extremely telling. And
yeah,
you know, it showed she was going to go a long way this season.
Yeah, and I think that Rachel may be the not Bachelor Nation, but the show Bachelor and their production team and franchise. I think she's the favorite because every time Matt has a date with her, there's fireworks, there's some type of extra hoopla.
She gets the best date.
He was dressed in a full suit, and I think for the other two girls, he was in like a turtleneck or a sweater. Like she gets, and I don't know if that's purposely because has more feelings for her, or if that's the show production side. But he really like she gets like the bonus stuff, which is again, it could be telling that like his feelings for her just just more present than the other girls. But I have to be honest, I think that Rachel wins. I think Rachel wins. But I do not, when I look at like Matt and Michelle and Bree and Matt and Rachel, I do not see Matt and Rachel together. Even though like he's clearly in love with her, I just don't look at them and I'm like, oh my God, they would make a cute couple. And it has nothing to do with like color of the skin, race, nothing. Like last season was like Tayshia and Zach are absolutely adorable together. I can see them together. I just don't, when I look at Matt, I just don't pair him with Rachel.
Yeah. See, like I see their strong connection, but I see a better future for him with someone like Michelle. Yep. Because I think she's more mature. She's right
up his alley. I mean, he does. Yeah. She teaches and he does all that inner city work with kids. Like they literally have all the same interests. Like they couldn't mesh better together. Like I honestly look and I'm like, what would him and Rachel do just like on a random Sunday? Like where him and Michelle, I just see, I don't know, I just see him with her more than I do with Rachel. But obviously I just like totally skipped the whole part where he sends someone home and I'm just blabbing on about Michelle and Rachel. But after they do go to the fantasy suite or whatever, and they have that evening together. Rachel is extremely confident. Like, I sometimes wonder if Matt has chosen her and like behind cameras is telling her it's her, because she's always, every episode, like overly confident.
Yeah, she is. And I don't think we see that much. Usually people are like scared and they genuinely don't know. But then she's like, and I think she said it to like her mom or dad, but she was like, I'm confident. I know it's me in the end.
Yeah.
Which I guess is like a good thing to have, like be as confident. Like at the same time, you're building yourself up and you are already planning your future ahead of time. And if you were to pick somebody else, everything gets like broken down.
Yeah, it's tough. Really tough.
But we did get into the rose ceremony following Rachel's fantasy suite date. Obviously, we have Michelle, Brie, and Rachel, and he ends up sending Brie home, which didn't shock me, but I'm sad to see her go, because like I loved Brie all season. She was like, seemed like a genuinely like good person, and I think she will do great.
Stunningly beautiful.
I think she'll do great on Paradise, and I think she will be an extremely hot commodity. In terms of the guys going after her.
I thought she handled her exit with like a lot of class. Like you could tell that she was ready to like sob, and she just was trying to be so mature and just handle herself like with elegance and class. And I just I really loved Brie, and I'm like sad to see her go. But obviously with the show, it always happens.
And so with Brie being sent home, next week will be the finale where we have Michelle and Rachel as the last two. I think we both can agree. We think it will be Rachel in the end. I think a lot of signs and like everything going on is sort of pointed towards that. Everything going on in Bachelor Nation. But in the finale, we are going. If you've been paying attention, Chris Harrison will not be hosting after the final rose. It's going to be Emmanuel Acho, who was a professional football player. Was drafted by the Cleveland Browns. He ended up going to, I think, working at ESPN for a while, and then he started his own like series called Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man. So he's
video podcast kind of thing.
Yeah, so it's like he's the perfect person to
I agree.
Address the situation at hand. Obviously, as everybody knows, there's a lot of issues with
Bachelor knows they can't have any more F-ups, so they have to pick the perfect person. And honestly, Rachel, like as much as everyone loves Rachel Lindsay, she's not the person. Like you need a very unbiased person
and completely out of like the Bachelor world,
and that actually can, because you know that they're not going to ignore it. It's going to get brought up, whether Rachel is the one in the end or she isn't. It's going to get brought up. They have to address it. And I think that like, I don't even know much about this guy, but the fact that like he has a podcast where he talks about, you know, this kind of stuff and like talking about race and how uncomfortable it is for people, he can't he can't F it up. Like,
and also this is, I believe, the first time ever that After the Final Rose is not live. After the Final Rose was recorded this past week, so they already recorded it, I'm sure, so it's perfect. No mess ups, no nothing.
Wow.
Because Emmanuel Acho posted a photo of like this. So they want it perfect, which I get. But like he is the perfect person to have this conversation. He brings police officers on his show. He talks like the issues at hand. He brings people willing to learn, and I think this is perfect because everything going on with Rachel and Chris Harrison, that he's the person to lead the discussion. And really, he has, I don't know if it's the right thing, but he has nothing to lose because he is outside of
absolutely.
the Bachelor world, so he's going to ask those hard-hitting questions that need to be asked.
Yeah, I agree. I think they picked a good person to take that task on. It'll definitely be different. Like, I'm curious to see
Yeah.
if it'll be mainly focused on that. And maybe just a little bit on, Matt and who he chooses or what.
Hmm.
But it's obviously going to be a surprise to everyone because it's not live.
And I'm very curious if they're going to keep him in the franchise going forward. Like, what's going to happen with Chris Harrison? Could they bring Acho back to host Paradise? Because I personally would not be surprised if Chris doesn't host Paradise this summer. I do think he is going to host The Bachelorette.
I agree.
Which starts in a couple weeks, but I do think he will take a break come Paradise and, I don't know, not hand the reins over to somebody else, but somebody else might take it over.
Wait, Bachelorette starts already?
Filming. They
No, I know. Dang, that's soon.
because it airs, I believe, May 11th.
Okay, yeah.
So they start filming next week.
I was totally thinking Paradise would be next.
Oh no, because it goes.
Yeah, I forgot.
Bachelor, Bachelorette, Paradise.
Just had.
But they will be announcing the Bachelorette at the After the Final Rose. I am not too sure if they're going to announce it before, and then kind of segue it into After the Final Rose. That's what they did with Claire. They announced that on GMA, and
that's how it used to be. Oh yeah, no,
they used to always do it on GMA. Well, it depended because Nick Viall was announced on GMA. True. I think Hannah Brown was announced on GMA. We do see a lot of people announced on GMA, but also After the Final Rose. So I don't know if they're going to announce it beforehand. Yeah, so I'm not sure if they're announced it beforehand or during After the Final Rose. But it is a 3-hour episode next week on Monday.
Oh my God.
So I think it's going to be really exciting, and it's the final episode of The Bachelor.
Yeah, we're going to have a lot to talk about. 3 hours worth.
Mm-hmm. I do hope that in the end, Matt is happy. I think Matt's a great guy. I don't think he was the best Bachelor. Nothing he really did, but just that he's not used to being on camera.
Yeah,
he was just boring. Sort of a boring Bachelor, but at the end of the day, he seems like a great guy. You could tell he wanted to find love, and so I hope he is happy at the end of this. But we'll see.
I have to say, I heard, and I would not be surprised if this is true, is that he chooses Rachel, but because of all the stuff that's going on right now, they end up breaking up.
Probably. I do definitely see them being the two at the end, just because their connection is beyond Michelle's, and I just think that's gonna not force him, but that's gonna be his decision to get down on one knee and propose to Rachel.
Yeah, definitely.
But that wraps up this week's episode of After the Final Rose with Alana and Dante Siblings Podcast. Make sure to like and follow us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and other podcast streaming platforms, as well as following us on Instagram at ATFR_podcast, as well as on YouTube and Instagram. We post our videos, and then the other podcast streaming platforms, you can listen to us via audio. So make sure you check those out, turn on notifications so you know whenever we post. And I'm excited for a final week of Bachelor and Matt James.
Yeah, it's already here. Finale week next week.
We'll see you guys then. Thank you and have yourself a good week.
Bye, guys.